Something I'm sure you would have never guessed about me based off of the topics of the content I produce is that I am an avid fan of weightlifting and bodybuilding. I think hitting the gym and strengthening one's body is just as important as strengthening the mind. But like all things that are good in principle, when done in excess, they can be very harmful and even deadly. The bodybuilder is a unique subset of true gym goers. While many, including myself, may think of themselves as some sort of bodybuilder, and to a degree we're not wrong, the true bodybuilder is in a very, very different league. Those select few you see on stage at the renowned Mr. Olympia competitions are the general idea of what an elite bodybuilder looks like, an individual that resembles the Hulk more than the average human. They almost look like a different species of human, in all honesty, and that's for good reason. Now, of course, these competitors have a work ethic that is to be admired and a level of discipline when it comes to dieting that is monk-like in nature. They also boast elite genetics, muscle bellies that were genetically gifted to them that allow for the hulking display of human muscle potential that we see on stage. But, believe it or not, there is one other secret ingredient that aids in many of the top bodybuilders' unnatural-looking physiques. And let me emphasize a word there: unnatural. Yes, of course, I am referring to the rampant use of steroids within the world of bodybuilding. For decades now, the top bodybuilders on Earth have used a litany of different steroids as a means to enhance their already impressive muscles, and there's a lot of different kinds of steroids. HGH, testosterone, trenbolone, the list goes on and on and on. And this topic has been the subject of controversy within the bodybuilding community and fitness community at large for many, many years, but has become quite the topic in the past couple. Now I'd like to point out that there are natural bodybuilders out there, but they literally compete in their own separate league because, generally speaking, it's two different games. It's two worlds. But what's interesting is that it wasn't always like this. If we go way back to the late 1800s, we will find the very beginning of bodybuilding as the sport we know it today, developing muscle for the sake of aesthetics over practicality. Between roughly 1890 to 1930, the early period of the sport would take form in what is now known as the Bronze Era of bodybuilding. Exercise science was basically non-existent at this point, and many of the earliest bodybuilder practitioners of the era are now looked upon as pioneers of both the sport and the science behind it. Legends like Eugene Sandow were inspired by the aesthetics of Roman and Greek statues, the chiseled features and poses in particular. He devoted himself to being a human replica of this form of art, building his body to do so. Another key and notable character from the era is, of course, George Hackenschmidt, a strongman and wrestler who famously invented the bench press and hack squat. Truly a god of all gym bros. When looking at the Bronze Age figures, it's pretty obvious to any viewer today that these men were dedicated to the craft of bodybuilding. Even by today's standards, they boast powerful muscles and athletic physiques, but still maintain the appearance of something that is natural, something that is obtainable, because they were. They were smaller by modern standards, but still laid out the groundwork for every generation of weightlifter to follow. They pioneered not only how to weightlift, but also how to show off the results, with their more unofficial competitions showcasing both their strength and also their aesthetics, with poses inspired by the aforementioned statues of old. But of course, as the world progressed, so did bodybuilding. By 1930, bodybuilding as a sport would fundamentally change. While the prior era had an emphasis on both strength and aesthetics, the new generation of Silver Era bodybuilders would move away from the strongman elements of the sport as a means to solely focus on human aesthetics. There was a heavier emphasis on posing and a refining of the physiques of the era. This era is sort of when the modern look of a bodybuilder started to take form. The narrow waist coupled with the wide chest to create a V-taper, the thick arms became an aesthetic style that would become sought after largely. But what could be seen as most notable about the Silver Era is how bodybuilding was introduced into pop culture. Silver Era athletes truly started to look like superheroes. Notable bodybuilders from the era, including Steve Reeves, would be the first to bridge bodybuilding into the world of entertainment. He would star in movies like Hercules and Duel of the Titans, showcasing his bodybuilder physique to the masses. He appeared on posters across movie theaters in the United States and looked like a modern-day Greek god, hence why he would play them in movies. But at this point, the Silver Era bodybuilder still seemed largely natural. John Grimek, another prominent bodybuilder of the Silver Era, displays a very impressive physique, but still is eclipsed by the size of even amateur bodybuilders today. This is of course due to the fact that he was not using any sort of steroids, and this wasn't by choice. Steroids usage existed at that time, but it was in a much more limited form. If we go back to the mid-1930s, there was hormone research occurring that led to the isolation in synthetic manufacturing of testosterone. Originally, it was intended to be used as a medical means, being used as a treatment for muscle decay, delayed puberty, and so on and so forth. During World War II, soldiers were sometimes given testosterone in an experimental fashion to see how it assisted in recovery and preventing fatigue. But the use of the substance was essentially relegated to medical treatment in scientific research. Of course, though, this would change. In the late 1950s, the American sports physician John Ziegler had taken up the role as the resident for the United States Olympic weightlifting team. At the time, the Soviet lifters were becoming dominant, showcasing seemingly unnatural strength in size. And well, what do you know? There's that word again, unnatural. Ziegler noticed how unnatural it really was, which led to his discovery that the Soviet team had been using their own form of testosterone to enhance their athletes. Solely in the spirit of competition, Ziegler worked with the HIPAA pharmaceutical company to synthesize Dianabol, definitely not for sport use. It was supposedly to help with osteoporosis or something, but it ended up just being something for sports. Anyways, that brings us to the next generation of bodybuilders, the Golden Age, occurring between the 60s to the mid-80s. The Golden Age is when bodybuilding really started to take off, so to say. Up until this point, gym culture and bodybuilding was kind of this niche thing. It wasn't super uncommon, but it wasn't a massive industry by any means. The Golden Era made bodybuilding very culturally relevant. A couple guys, maybe you've heard of them, became the poster boys of the sport. Lou Ferrigno literally became the Hulk. Franco Columbu was a complete legend. Frank Zane was a beast. And of course, there was Arnie. Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger, the king of the Golden Era and the god of the sport. These guys were in movies, on late night shows, and ads. Hell, they had their own documentary made about them called Pumping Iron, which, side note, is fantastic. They were charismatic. They were redefining the sport. They had physiques like no one had ever seen because they were all on steroids. Dianabol became a pretty easy-to-get thing for most gym goers at the time, and it really enhanced their physiques to a different level. The Golden Era sorta made steroid use a must for the top-level athletes within the sport. And it's funny, too, because these guys looked great. In fact, to many, they had the best builds the sport ever achieved. Of course, this was due to advances in weightlifting science, but their stack of roids, that can't be ignored, though their stack is modest by today's standards. Dianabol, Test, and Decadurabolin were the main ingredients for their stack of muscle. Anyways, this started to set an expectation about two things. One was the use at the top level. From this point forward, all the bodybuilders would have to use these drugs in order to compete at the highest levels. But the other thing it started to implement was this feeling of secrecy. Though they never outright denied steroids, or maybe they didn't talk about them that much. The focus was the gym. And for the first time, the concept of unrealistic expectations to normal people would really start to occur. Remember, the bodybuilders of past eras were natural. Though they were elite physically, they were not enhanced. They still looked obtainable to a normal man. Golden Era is what changed this. People started idolizing these bodybuilders, hoping to achieve a build like theirs through hard work alone, which, as we know now, is not realistic, but to people at the time, they thought it was. Now, inspiring people to go to the gym is not bad at all. In fact, it's great. But I highlight this because it started to set the standard in the bodybuilding world. Now, these guys, they eventually aged out, and the next generation started to grow, get it? In the beginning of the 90s, the Mass Monster era would begin. The Mass Monster era is when bodybuilding kind of started to get weird. People like Ferrigno and Arnie were sort of the limit of human muscle in a aesthetic sense that the world could conceptualize at the given time. But the bodybuilders of the 90s, oh man, they were just built different, literally. The size that these guys achieved truly started to bridge the line of completely unnatural without question. Jay Cutler, absolute unit. Dorian Yates, freak. And of course, Ronnie Coleman, maybe as big as they come. The style of aesthetic in this era greatly shifted too. For starters, they were thick. Like, look at these guys. I don't know what else I can say about this. As you can see, they were much bigger and much wider than any prior generation. But coupled with that, their muscles were really grainy looking. Striations became a very important part of aesthetics. A striation is when you can see the muscle fiber through the skin, and this look is only achieved through dangerously low body fat percentages. Okay, let's talk about body fat percentages. The normal body fat percentage of a man is around 18 to 24% body fat. This is pretty standard. You don't look overweight, you just look normal at this point. Bodybuilders in the golden age were cutting down to 8 to 9% for their competition. So they looked pretty lean, right? But they didn't have those striations. The mass monsters were cutting down to like 3% for their competition, with Coleman claiming he even got to like 0.3%, which I frankly do not believe. But okay, so why does this matter? Why am I telling you this? Body doesn't naturally function to its highest capability between 2 and 5%, with most experts stating that's the absolute bare minimum for survival. That's for a normal person. We're talking about giant, muscled, roided out freaks here walking around at 2% body fat. That's not good for their bodies. These guys were getting far bigger than prior generations and far, far, far leaner for competitions too. Here's my obligatory, these guys had wild diets and discipline statement, but okay, so did the last generation. Let's be blunt here. It was their stack. The roid stack grew a lot in the 90s, and so did they. What a coincidence. They increased the dosages, they increased the stacks, they added new ones. Notably, the use of HGH became widespread, HGH being human growth hormone, which probably resulted in their extreme muscle density and thickness. They used Winstrol, another powerful roid that promotes the growth of lean muscle, and they used insulin for additional muscle gain and extreme weight loss. The 90s were the first time that we would see steroids also start to sort of mutate their users. A side effect of HGH is growing and morphing your whole body, not just the muscles. Facial features and facial bones become kind of warped and swollen, and famously its users develop the turtle shell stomach, where their abs swell in size, creating the appearance of a bloated gut. Quite the contrast of the golden era, if you ask me. At this point, all of this was fairly easy to get still too, but that changed in the 90s. In 1990, the Anabolic Steroid Control Act was passed, which made all steroids illegal to obtain without medical prescription. The Bodybuilding Federation started testing their athletes, but they clearly didn't give a shit. Anyways, as we know, making a drug illegal doesn't make it unattainable, like at all. Bodybuilders continued to get them in one way or another, and all the while the sport became more and more popular. As we entered the modern era of bodybuilding, the competition still exists. There are still professional bodybuilders with extreme prominence and presence in our modern world today. Take Chris Bumstead, for example. He openly pumps roids and is a bodybuilding legend with a lot of fans. And here I'd like to emphasize something. Chris is not the problem. In the past 10 years or so, online fitness content has become one of the biggest, most popular, and most profitable subcultures of content creation you can find on the internet today. And it is here that the modern death cult of bodybuilding has started to form. The influencer known as Ziz, Z-Y-Z-Z, is commonly pointed as the first real fitness influencer of the modern era. Basically, he was the first random jack guy to get a big following online. Now, Ziz, he was a great guy. He had a great message, and his personality was really pure. Z's also heavily abused steroids. In fact, he would die from a heart attack at the age of 22. And while this is attributed to an underlying heart condition, him pumping and abusing an absurd amount of steroids, it definitely didn't help. And his early death almost seemed like an eerie form of foreshadowing for what would become of many fitness influencers. As time has gone on, fitness influencers have become more and more extreme. In a field where being jacked is simply not enough, many seek to set themselves apart through more and more insane gimmicks. Now, I'd like to pause here and say that I don't think this is the direct fault of bodybuilding alone. In fact, more of the blame can be placed upon the use of social media and how it feeds upon insecurities. I can't imagine being a teenager and seeing the countless amount of anime physique gymfluencers out there who claim to be natural. This, of course, will lead to a sense of body dysmorphia in any sort of insecure young man. There is a term called bigorexia. While it's obviously not a real medical condition, it's a play on the eating disorder of anorexia, which is a severe life-threatening eating disorder in which the fear of gaining weight is so intense that it leads to self-starvation and dangerous amounts of weight loss. Bigorexia as a concept is the complete opposite. The idea of bigorexia is a fear of being perceived as skinny or weak that is so deep-rooted and intense that it leads to those suffering from it to take dangerous routes to achieve mass, aka body dysmorphia. We are now seeing a generation of youth brought up in the gymfluencer era suffering from bigorexia and extreme body dysmorphia due to social media usage in their developmental phases, and the consequences it's having on them are profound. For years, many gymfluencers denied the use of steroids in obtaining their out-of-this-world physique. In around 2021, I credit the net-positive gymfluencer Daddy Noel starting the trend of open steroids usage. He openly admits to using steroids, which led to many others doing so as well. But it's not just an admission of enhancement. He specifies that he has medical professionals that assist him with dosage and what substances he uses, and an emphasis on the danger of administration without proper medical supervision or knowledge. His call to action may have been due to the death of his close friend, Joe Linder, aka Joe Aesthetics, who died at the age of 30. And he heavily abused steroids, contributing to his eventual passing. And Joe is not alone. Boston Lloyd, another prominent bodybuilding figure, died at the age of 29. He had publicly documented his steroid usage for years and eventually died due to liver failure. An autopsy report stated that he had also suffered from heart enlargement and organ damage, a common side effect of steroid abuse, particularly HGH. Most famously, there is Rich Piana. He was a beloved fitness legend whose extreme steroid usage would eventually lead to his cause of death. But even with all of these warnings from those living and those who have died, it seems that the death cult of bodybuilding will continue to claim more victims in the pursuit of fame and size. Sam Sulek has gained immense popularity in just a few years. While I am a fan of his and I find him, his message, and his content to all hold encouraging messaging, it's undeniable that he is wildly abusing steroids. Many gymfluencers have publicly stated their concern for his health as well. Sam in many videos would run out of breath simply just speaking to the camera. Thankfully, it seems Sam has found proper coaching in his career that will also assist in how he uses steroids, but the same cannot be said for countless other influencers who are gaining traction today. On the flip side of the steroid safety movement, there are influencers whose steroid abuse has become like a part of their online branding, essentially. There are the Trend Twins, who openly blast steroids in a weirdly comedic fashion. Most disturbingly, there is Max Wadsworth, a steroid-abusing influencer who uses a CPAP machine in order to breathe properly at the age of 21. When looking at him, it's clear that if he continues on this path, it will lead to an early death. In 2025 alone, 55 young bodybuilders died from health issues tied to steroid use, with countless other legends of the sport facing health complications due to their practices as well. And all of this is a result of the culture that has surrounded bodybuilding in the past few years. As we've seen here today, there have always been roid blasting giants. The scale in which it occurs now has never been seen before. The ecosystem of gymfluencers promoting this lifestyle is resulting in a bizarre online death cult of young men abusing dangerous substances that can cost them their lives, and in the name of what? To some, it seems to be an intense feeling of body dysmorphia that has gripped their entire existence, leading them to do this. For others, it seems like a bizarre desire for fame has led them to sacrifice their health and well-being for views. And what's most disturbing about this is that many are being cheered on while it's occurring. The likes and engagement someone like Max Wadsworth obtains is associating his physical demise with an online persona. All the while, people cheer him on as he essentially is documenting his slow death for everyone to see. Despite the warnings, despite the leaders in the community advising caution, the death cult of bodybuilding continues to grow and claim more victims despite the root purpose of the sport being tied to self-improvement. I hope you understand that this isn't necessarily bodybuilding's fault, but rather how social media within the space plays on people's insecurities and amplifies them to a dangerous level. No teenager should be blasting roids or even research chemicals as a means to enhance their self-perceived appearance. And what starts out as a meme for many ends up leading them down a road that permanently alters their health and can even end their lives. And that might be as twisted as anything gets on the internet. Maybe I'm being a bit dramatic here, but I'm starting to see a trend, and I think I'm not the only one. And I'm definitely not the only one who's made this claim either. The gym is a good thing, ultimately, but like I said at the beginning, all things are good, but when done in excess, they can be harmful. Well, thank you for watching today's video. I hope you learned a little bit about bodybuilding. Don't blast absurd steroids, even if you know what you're doing. I think it's a bad idea. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.